we're planning to put on an event at this conference in San Francisco in about 3 or 4 weeks. And we're going to go through how we can add all the tasks related to setting up such an event into Jira. So basically, putting on an event is a new project. So we're basically thinking that this is like its own project, but not in the sense that Jira thinks of projects. So Jira thinks of projects the way we're kind of thinking of the companies. So we have EOS block production, which obviously doesn't really cover what we're working on. Project management, which is, I think, George and Trenton's kind of thing. And then the HIMP crew, which I think is Dwayne's work. Doesn't really seem to fit into any of these. So we could create a project that is specifically for like the business side of things. And so you'll see this create project up here. Now, this is something that we're going to do this once, and we don't need to do it for every single project that there is. Okay, so content dev.
Yeah.
It's going to have a key of CD. We don't really need to change that. I think that's okay. And then we're just going to create it. So the board that I've been using with Trenton so far is the EOS block production, which is more of like the technical.
Yep.
And so you see these swim lanes.
Yep.
And we've got it set up for software. So got to do, in progress, peer review, which is like code review, and then testing, ready to put into production because presumably we've been creating our code in a dev environment, and then done. We don't need these 3 really for business. So if I look here, I've got backlog, selected for development, in progress, and done. So we probably don't need selected for development either. So if you click these 3 dots in the corner, hold on, I've got Zoom covering things.
Yep.
Okay. I think you can go into board settings.
Yep.
And then on the left, you'll see swim lanes.
Yep.
Let's go to columns.
Columns. Okay.
And so you can see all the different columns that we already saw, but now we have the ability to get rid of them or add some.
Add
So
or
I'm going to get rid of selected for development because we definitely don't need that.
If I add, I can name it whatever I want.
Yeah, too. I can rename any of these. If I press this little it's whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. So you may have any number of columns that you want to put in here, and they don't have to be applicable to every single thing that you're doing. It's just like what you need in general. So like if I go back to my EBP board for the technical work, not everything is going to require code review. I can skip things. I can like skip over and go straight to here or straight to done. Like a lot of the tasks I've been working on recently just go straight from in progress to done. And like I fully skip these. But like this is kind of the generic workflow of software development. So like we've put this workflow into place. So for the projects that you work on, and you may not know straight away what you want in here, but maybe as time goes on, like you realize, hey, we should have a column for this because we're consistently in progress, and then realizing that there's like this other step that has to be done before we can switch it to done. Like maybe you need sign off from Scott. And so there's like a sign off column, and I'm just going to add that to show how to add it. There is this add column at the top, and it clearly added one, and I'm just going to say put sign off on here. And so now it's added a column. Don't really need to worry about this no min, no max. This is just referring to the minimum number of items in this column and the maximum number of items in this column.
Okay.
I didn't really touch that unless you feel like there's a reason to at some point. Maybe that's actually something you want to do at some point. Maybe you've realized that everyone's taking on too much work. And so the in progress column can never have more than 20 items. Like, who knows? But for the purposes of what we're working on, it's unlikely that we're going to need those. And you'll notice that like there's these little boxes down here that also kind of reflect the same name. These are part of a workflow. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about that right now. This column will not show on the board without a status. And this is something that really only administrators of the board should be doing. When we deleted the selected for development column, the status got put over here in the unmapped column. And so like I could technically put this in here. What this means is that as you
okay. Yeah, I lost
through,
that.
But as you go through tickets, you can change the status of them.
I see.
And you typically want these statuses to sort of like reflect the names of the columns, hopefully. So in this case, that wouldn't happen because this is called selected for development and this is called sign off, and clearly those two are not the same thing. So what we really want to do is go and change this workflow and change the name of this status so that it makes more sense. But each column has to have a status, otherwise you can't put anything in that column. There's project settings on the left.
Yeah.
Click that. And this is part of workflows. So I click that on the left.
Yeah.
Actions. So now you can see these are the 4 statuses that came with this project. There's backlog, selected for development, in progress, and done. So maybe I want to add a status, and I'm going to call it sign off just to keep going with what I was doing before. And I'm also going to click allow all statuses to transition to this one. So what that means is if I'm in to do, I can go straight to ready. So you can see here that I can't go to everything. I can only go to ready for prod or done. And that's that's based on the workflow. But if I'm here, I can go to the next column. So you can configure this so that you have to go into each column. You can configure it so that if it's in this column, it can go everywhere. But if it's in this column, it has to go here first. There is so much flexibility with Atlassian. It's good and bad. It's good because you have control, but it's bad because you have too much control sometimes. Yeah. So for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to say all statuses can transition to this one. So no matter where you are on the board, you can come to this column.
Okay.
So I clicked create, and I'm just going to write in the description, get approval from Scott. So like I'm actually going to change this to in progress, I think, because to do implies that you haven't started yet.
Okay, yeah.
Progress is like we've done something, but it's not done yet, and then done is done. I'm sure that there's a place that you can add more categories, but we're not going to. Yep. So I'm going to hit create. Now I've got sign off up here.
All right. Now this is.
I don't know if I need to drag it around. I wonder if I can delete this. Yep. Remove status. Nope. It exists somewhere, so I can't.
I see. Okay.
I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to like put it up here so that I don't have to look at it. I'm going to pop in progress. Whoop. You don't have to put these in order. I'm just doing this so that like it kind of makes sense what order they go in. If we hadn't chosen to have all transitions go to this, we would be able to like drag between them, and then it would matter like what order they were in. But all of these can go everywhere, so it's not a big deal. Okay, so I can publish.
Okay. That's
So I'm about to publish this workflow. This will overwrite the active workflow and remove the draft. Click publish. Save a backup. No. Backup. Don't care. Okay. So now if I go back to my project and go back to my project settings, and then I'm going to click the 3 dots at the top again and go to board settings.
Board settings. Okay. Yep.
So now when I scroll down, you see
now. Boom.
So I'm going to put my sign off in there.
Yeah. Okay.
So like this is basically set up, and I mean if you choose to use this project, you won't have to do this very much. And so now if I go back to my Kanban board, I can see all 4 columns. And so now we're going to get to the stuff that you will use more often. So every time you want to create an issue, you just go over here and there's a plus sign. And we're here, issues. So the project is the project that you're on. So issue types. since we've created a project for like an entire like segment of the business, every epic should be a project. So in this case, an epic will be this particular conference event, right? The epic
EOS World X.
Everything else. What?
Okay. So we will select epic.
Yeah. Yeah. For your first issue, if you have a project in mind, an epic is the way to go. It should like encase everything else. Every now and then you'll have a task that is not related to a project. Maybe it's just something really administrative, like, oh, I need to set up a Kanban board. Like, it's not related to a particular project. It's just something you need to do. So there are times where maybe you wouldn't reference an epic, but this is like the first thing you should do is create an epic. Let me just describe what the rest of these are before I continue. So the epic is meant to contain a bunch of other items to do. It's just a larger project. And then within an epic, you have a lot of stories. And stories are the small pieces that are going to get you to complete your epic. So if we're putting an event together, what are some of the things that you need to do? Or that anyone needs to do?
So we will need to select a venue.
Okay. So you'd have select a venue, probably have invite people, probably have arrange travel plans for ambassadors that will be attending for this event.
Set a time.
Create an agenda.
There's all the...
there's so much that'll go into it.
Music, sound, security, staffing, food, beverages, all the...
Exactly. So those would all be individual stories. Stories can have subtasks. So even the story of invite or arrange travel plans for all the ambassadors, that might have other like sub pieces that might be create a list of ambassadors to invite, verify that they can all go, get them to send you itineraries that they want to fly, and then book flights, send confirmation, whatever. Like there could be a list of 20 things that go under just like arrange travel plans. So it's kind of like breaking everything down into smaller and smaller pieces. So normally, and I'll get into this when we create an actual story, you normally don't need to like use this task option very often. So if you're creating an issue and you're trying to decide if it should be a story or task, the only time I choose task is when it doesn't belong to an epic. I like to think of a task as an administrative thing that's outside of your normal work. So for instance, there's a course I want to take. That's going to help me on all my projects, but is not like specific to a project. So I'm going to create a task for me to do that. And then a bug is self-explanatory. For the business side of things, not sure if you'll ever need that. It's definitely kind of a code-related issue type. If anyone finds an issue.
Might just be like a person that bugs me.
Bug.
Jeremy.
And then just in the description, just like tag them.
Yeah, just be at Jeremy. Yeah, bug.
So let's start with an epic.
Okay.
And I'm just
Expo.
Expo, gotcha. Yeah. Summary would just be event in San Fran. And then description, you can just get into more detail.
Yeah. Okay.
And blah.
That's where I'll put like generally what the event is about.
Yeah, just like an overview of like what you kind of expect and like as it pertains to what you have to do, basically.
Yeah, I get it.
So priority, you don't really need to use this very often. I don't think at this point in time that we're like operating with so many projects that this is going to come into play. But this is self-explanatory. If you have a million things going on the Kanban board and you want people to notice something before they like pick low-hanging fruit, you can just adjust the priority of it. It'll automatically set everything to medium if you don't.
Okay.
And then labels. This is to further categorize if you want to. I like to create labels. And again, this is for software development, but I have labels for like UI. I have a label for databases, server-side programming, front-end programming. And that way I just know at a glance whether the thing I'm working on, like what type of software development I'm doing. You can create whatever you want for this or just leave it blank.
Do those become like searchable tags? Is that
yes.
how that? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So like right now we have nothing here, but like I'll put content creation. Okay. Apparently they have to be one word. So content creation, and from now on that'll be an option when you're in here. If you when I create another one, I'll use it again and it'll pop up.
Okay.
And then you can attach files that are relevant. And then, okay, so linked issues. I like this one a lot. But I only like the first two. The other ones mean nothing to me. So basically, you're not going to need this for an epic, but as we create stories, you may find that maybe you can't arrange travel plans before doing another task.
Okay, I see.
And so basically you won't be able to start one of these one of the stories until another story is done.
It's a requirement to complete or to move to this one.
Exactly. And then once you've chosen one of these, or if you choose one of these, you can then go in here and actually choose which issue. So let me just give a quick sample here. So if I create a task, summary is going to be I'm just going to be lazy. I'm going to say is blocked by, and then these are like the most recent ones. EBP is just the project code. I'm just going to choose another one that belongs to me so that only I get affected by this. And then I'm going to assign it to myself and create, right? So once I've chosen this, I can choose any other story that's in there.
Awesome. Okay.
And you might know, like if you don't know a number, you can probably start typing the name of it. Maybe not. Thought it would do that. Well, it started to. It's got C. Yeah, so it does search by that. And then you want to assign it to somebody. So assign to me, we'll just assign it to actually me. Or if I want to assign it to you, I can start typing in your name, but I guess not.
Yeah, you should be able to drop down. I was able to. Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, and then you can, also you should be able to just drop it down and.
Yeah, when I did the drop down, everybody shows up.
Yeah, I think it's because I started typing something. So it says, an epic cannot have another epic linked to it. That's cool. All right, so I'm going to create. Woo! So you're in the backlog now. So now I can go ahead and, so I created an epic. And like usually, before I start like coming in and creating all this stuff, I usually put pen to paper and kind of put an outline of what I want. That way you're not just like, oh wait, actually we also need to do that.
Go back. Oh no, I don't need that. Oh wait.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to figure it out in here. I can see that.
So I hit this plus sign over on the left again, and I'm back at the same page basically. Okay, now I'm going to create a story. Yeah. And so I'm just going to say book talent is a story.
Okay.
Or maybe just, if you want to do subtasks, you can make this like more generic, but I don't. I only do subtasks when like.
So that could be talent, and under that in subtask it could be book talent.
Yeah, there could be like a lot more. It's kind of just up to you, like what your style is. I don't feel the need to like get super, super granular with it. And so in here, let's see if it'll be in the drop down now. Yeah, so now the label I've made is already here.
Yep.
And obviously this is not related to talent, but I don't care. And maybe I'm going to say blocks the whole epic. I'm just going to get crazy with it. You probably shouldn't ever block epics, but it's fine. I'll assign it to myself. And now, so this epic link, when we created the epic, you couldn't do anything here. But now I can say, hey, this is actually part of this epic.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And the story belongs to this epic.
Because otherwise the story's just floating out there in the...
Yeah, otherwise they're not, yeah. they're not attached to a project. Or an epic, I should say, because they're all attached to this project. So if I check this check mark here for create another, it'll just keep popping up this create issue screen so that I don't have to click the plus sign again. And so you would just do this to create everything you have. Let me go over creating a subtask though, because you probably will use them at some point.
I think, yeah, I could see that.
So if I click book talent, it's going to bring up this little pop-up. I'm going to hit, we're working on a more consistent issue view. Okay, cool. Maybe later. So when you open this, it's just like all the information. You can attach files, you can add files, you can decide to create like a to-do. Oh, here we go. That's the subtask. That's what I was going for. So now if I click this little kind of like to-do list button, it creates a subtask. So maybe I'm going to say, find talent. And then maybe I'm going to say, I don't know, what else? Sign contracts. And then arrange travel. Right? Every time I do this, it's creating an actual Jira task.
Okay.
So if I click on this now, it's opening a whole nother one of these that has all the same like stuff that you can do. You can add attachments. You can't add subtasks to subtasks. So that is one limitation, but I think that's probably for the best.
Whoa.
Yeah, so I exited out of everything. I'm going back to book talent just to continue showing it to you. So you can just click around in here and change everything, book talent, do all the things to get talent. Like, great. Like, that's just your description. And now, if someone has questions about this or comments, there are comments at the bottom. You can say, hey, how do we find people for this? Who is responsible? So like maybe point out that we
have not assigned the task.
Yeah, we haven't assigned this to anybody. And we could do the same thing in the find talent task.
Okay, great.
Like, so you can have whole conversations in these tickets so that you don't lose them, or maybe you've spoken in Slack and you want that conversation here so that anybody can like get that same information. And so now I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't assign anything. I've got my assignee over here.
And so there you go. Yeah.
Assign to myself. Yeah. So now I've assigned it. So the reporter and the assignee are just a little bit different. The reporter is who created this task, and the assignee is who is supposed to do something with this task.
Okay.
You may see this time tracking over here. It's exactly what it sounds like. You can track your time that you've spent on this. And time estimate's another one that it's up to you. If you think this is going to take 30 minutes, then great. You can put 30 minutes on here. These two go together. Time estimate and time tracking go together. So like you see now it's added 30 minutes here. So I could say, actually, I've spent 45 minutes on this, and it's kind of showing that I've gone over, and that was the estimate. And I can say, this took longer because no one answered their phone. Like, I don't know.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And so you can like give your reasoning. Since I created this through that story and just like that little thing that was at the top, not this one, but the one that looked like a to-do.
Yeah, task, yep.
It didn't actually link this to the epic, which annoys me, but I feel like it should. Oh.
Yeah, seems like it should.
Okay, cool. It's because you can't add subtasks to epics. They're automatically
because they're automatically associated with the.
Interesting.
I see.
Well, in that case, they should not have an epic link. Right?
Why does it show up there? Yeah.
It's fine. Whatever.
I'm writing a letter.
And then and then components and fixed versions, we're not going to need that. Again, that's kind of like software development related.
Okay.
So now if I go back here, okay,
yeah,
I need to refresh. That's why. I was going to say my subtask should be in there. So now this is the backlog. This is everything. And now if I wanted to, I could say, hey, I'm starting find talent. And so this is a Kanban board. That's all you do with it. You move things around. You say you're done. You're done with this. Great. It's just a way for you to track everything.
Yeah.
And so there's something called a sprint. I don't know. A sprint is just an arbitrary period of time to do work. It can be as long or as short as the project manager decides. Typically in software, sprints are 2 weeks. I know Trenton and I, the way we've set up the other Kanban board is for 2-week sprints. And basically what you do at the beginning of that 2 weeks is you look through your backlog and you say, I can do this one and this one in 2 weeks. And you commit to a certain amount of work for 2 weeks. You don't have to get it done. And if you get it done early, you can bring in more work. But the whole goal of a sprint is figuring out how much work you can get done and like planning effectively. And at the end of the 2 weeks, in traditional agile methodology, you would get together for a retrospective and talk about what went well, what went wrong, and like that's it. And then pick your next sprint, pick the work for the next sprint. I think sprints are best used when like you just have a massive project going on that's going to take months and months and months. And it just kind of like keeps you on like you feel like you're accomplishing something because you've broken everything into these little tasks and like, okay, well, in the next 2 weeks, I've committed to getting this much more of this monstrous project done. But yeah, when you've got 3 weeks to do something, it doesn't make sense to like sit around and talk about what you're going to do. Like you obviously know that everything in this epic needs to be done by this date.
Yeah.
If it's not, then like you didn't complete everything and you already know that the sprint has failed. Okay, so I see create board here. Let me look at that. Create a Scrum board. Perfect. With new software project, I'm going to do existing. And I'm going to try and pick this project. I don't know. What do you want to call it? I'm just going to call it a Scrum board. And then content dev. Cool.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. This is what it looks like. And so here you can create sprint. And if you'll have more than one story when you're creating a sprint, but you just drag what you want in the sprint into the sprint, and then your backlog should have just a huge list of issues. So like, let me go over into EBP. So this one's a Scrum board. If you go into the backlog, so you can see, all right, so this is the sprint that we're currently in. We have 22 issues in it. So this is all the stuff that Carl, Trenton, and I, and Dwayne, you see his face over here. That's Carl. Oh, you're over here too. Everyone's in here. These are all the tasks that we've basically committed to for a 2-week period of time. And then if you go down to backlog, there's 26 other things that either just need to be cleaned out or like create onboarding checklist for Rebecca. Like that should probably be cleaned out of here. But a lot of this is probably stuff that just needs to be done in the future. Like fix BP JSON file probably needs to be done still. And so what you would do is when you're creating your sprint, you just drag around what you want into the sprint. And then once you've decided what you want, you hit start sprint. And you can name it. Normally you just name it based on the date. I don't know. You don't really want to name them anything funky. Duration, you can choose to 1 to 4 weeks or whatever you want. And then sprint goal, I don't think anyone ever fills that out. Sprint goal, do work. And then you would start it. I'm not going to start this just because we're probably going to delete this anyway, but yeah. And so that's basically all you need for using Jira. You need to know how to create issues, and you need to have this little board set up so that it looks the way you want it to. But yeah, so that's basically all there is to it.